Jesus says here, you've heard an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But let me tell you what I'm demanding. Not to resist an evil person. Does that offend you? It offends me. Now, Jesus isn't teaching some form of wimpy pacifism here. He's not just simply saying, well, look, why don't you just never fight back because you're going to be scared anyways. What he's telling us is you better leave room for me to do the work. And that's the fundamental of all this. He's going to give us 4 basic examples, and each one of them, again, emblematic to a certain area. The first of them, and by the way, all of these he says, this is sort of emblematic of an evil person. The first is someone slaps you on the cheek. On the right cheek, well, then turn them off of your other also. And it's amazing. In every culture, a slap on the face is a complete affront to your honor. The whole idea of somebody slapping you on one cheek and offering the other is you surrendering and me surrendering my honor. And that's the first of these 4 things. If I want to represent Jesus Christ accurately, I have to be willing to surrender my honor. But think about it. Is there anyone in the world that has ever demonstrated the surrender of their honor greater than Jesus? To think, one who has the complete knowledge of all of the universe, blindfolded, and a guy smacks him and says, prophesy, who hit you now? And Jesus could have said, your name's Brutus, you're age 34, and let me tell you the most embarrassing moments of your life. Not only that, smack me again and watch what happens. Jesus has complete and absolute power to do whatever he wanted and surrendered every bit of it to be completely and utterly disgraced in the sight of everyone, to hang naked, which is the way they crucified individuals 2,000 years ago, with spit dripping off of his face from people he was seeking to save. And I want to represent Jesus to the rest of the world. And I think that I have to defend my honor? Hey, look it. If your God's not real, you got to defend it. If your God is real, he'll defend you. So decide which one you want. My decision's made. In that, I have to ask myself, am I really willing to surrender, not to man, but to God, my honor? Here's the good news. For everything that I separate myself from and surrender to him now, by the way, it's all transitory, I get a permanent and a greater thing up in heaven. The honor that I receive in heaven is infinite, and it isn't temporary. It's transcending. So this is where do you want it? Do you want it here or do you want it there? Let me tell you a little story. There's a man named Satish Galade. Satish is a radical militant. He's a radical Hindi militant that was known for being the knuckle breaker. Up in the northern area of Bengali, of India. He was the henchman. And he was assigned to a specific area and told the pastor, look, you baptize an individual, I'll beat you. The pastor didn't stop, he baptized, and this man, Satish, beat him. And then the pastor was told, if you go around and preach the gospel to anyone else, I'll beat you. The pastor continued to preach the gospel. Satish continued to beat the man. He says, if you ever carry that book around and start teaching from that book, I will beat you. The pastor continued to carry around his Bible, continued to teach, and Satish continued to beat him, to the point where it became sort of an ordinary, common offense. But this man was always looking around the corner, and the pastor lived, knowing that at any given moment, Satish was going to jump out and jump him. One day after one of these encounters, Satish is on his way home, and a voice speaks to him and says, I need you. Just follow me. Satish, in his anger, decides he doesn't want to listen to this. He tries to block it out of his mind. He goes home, tries to sleep. And every time he closes his eyes, the voice comes back. I need you. Follow me. After a night of grappling with this voice, do you know where he goes? He goes to that pastor. He says, this is what I keep hearing. You need to tell me what it means. Shortly thereafter, Satish is giving his life to Jesus Christ. I know the story personally because the second half of my trip in India was with Pastor Satish, who is a pastor of 3 churches now in that area. Now, I asked Satish, sitting down with him, sir, if that pastor had fought back, would you have gone to him? But absolutely not. You see, though Satish was flexing all the human strength he could to try to dominate, intimidate, and commandeer this individual, this pastor showed a strength that Satish didn't possess. A strength so great that when a voice came to him, Satish knew that the only God who could be stronger than what he thought he was serving had to be the one that gave that guy strength not to fight back. So Satish gets saved. He turns around and shares with an individual who's a worker at a hotel. This particular hotel worker gives his life to Jesus Christ. It's the beginning of Satish's ministry. As it is the case, it's an illegal conversion. You have to report it. This man doesn't report it, so the commander of the police comes to his house with a small group to arrest this man who was the hotel worker. He comes to the door and he says, you have two options. You can come with me and be arrested and beat for your illegal conversion, or you can right now renounce the name of Jesus Christ, to sign this paper and say you're converting back to Hinduism, to your former life, and everything will be good. This particular individual turns to the police officer after a moment of prayer and says, I'll make a deal with you. I'll happily sign that paper if you'll sign mine. Of course, the commander says, come again? So listen, when I was a Hindu, I was an angry, uncaring, violent drunk. And I met Jesus Christ, and He delivered me from every bit of that. So, if I am going to walk away from the one who delivered me from all of that, when I get drunk and I beat your wife, you have to sign a paper that says you will not press charges. Because you are the one who wanted me to choose this. The commander gave his life to Jesus Christ instead. Now, neither one of those men fought back. They stepped out of the way and let God do the work. They could have, but they didn't. See, the problem is that we were raised on the idea of fighting back. Don't let them, and everything in our common sense, a boy like myself, raised on the south side of Chicago, I look and I think, yeah, if they get you, you get them back, yeah? And Jesus says, sit down, Junior. You really think the most important thing is to defend yourself? I want them saved. And nothing is more important to God than saving people. And if we're going to bring somebody to judgment prematurely, do you really think that's in the benefit of God's heart? Somebody bothers you and drives you nuts because they're so unsaved. The bottom line is they need to die, but it's the old man in them that needs to die, and they need to be made a new creation. And that's what God's in the business of. But it doesn't happen in our lives unless we're willing to surrender our honor to the living God.